Oh gosh, I am so sorry, everybody. It's just one of those days, I suppose, for me. Can you hear me yet? Am I unmuted now? Okay, great. Yeah, like I said, one of those days today. So we will be recording the session. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, and feel free to ask your questions anytime. Or if you want, feel free to save them to the end as well. So today's session is our homebound how-to. I'm with YRL Regional Library, and my name's Christine Hutchinson. I think I might have covered that maybe when I was muted, but all right. So this webinar is going to be based on my experience when I was a homebound coordinator. And so this homebound delivery service was specifically for seniors and that were both living in their individual households or in shared living circumstances. I also did coordination of volunteers for delivery and created a fundraising support option for the program. So this one will be specifically based around seniors, but it could be applicable in other cases. So I'll just go over kind of what we're going to see today. So I'm going to define what homebound means. We'll go over what you should do before you get started or before you implement the program. Then we'll talk about providing programs to the individuals. We'll go into providing homebound service for groups, and then we can chat about any additional ideas that I implemented and any additional ideas that you may have as well. All right, so the first thing that's important is, what does homebound mean? So homebound refers to patrons that are unable to visit the library due to various health or mobility issues. And typically these patrons are senior citizens, but this isn't always the case. So an example could be, maybe you have some wheelchair bound patrons that you maybe regularly see over the spring and summer, but sometimes because of seasonal transportation difficulties, you might not see them so much in the winter. So it's possible that you might want to consider providing a homebound delivery service to these individuals, so that way they're accessing materials over the entirety of the year. And that way too, like things like the weather aren't stopping them from accessing the library. But because my experience is just with seniors homebound delivery, that's what I'm going to be speaking to specifically. All right, so before you get started, so it's important to ask, what do you have the capacity for? You don't want to implement a program that will be too much for your library to handle, or out of your reach for your library, sort of thing. So the first question you want to figure out is indicating the type of homebound patrons your community may have. So examples of this could be individuals in their own households, or individuals or groups that live in shared complexes. So things like retirement homes, assisted living, long-term care, seniors apartments. Each of these places offers the ability to provide delivery to them. The next is, you want to determine the type of service that you could offer. So would you strictly do individual or group delivery, maybe a combination of both? Would you provide personalized selection, or would you allow the patrons to browse the selection? And then, is the delivery going to be done by library staff, a volunteer, or a designated person? So these are all different questions that you'll want to ask yourself before you implement the program. And a designated person means, maybe there's a family member or a care worker that the individual has that would come and either pick up books or select books, but it's that person who's taking care of the homebound patron. And then the final one you need to consider is sharing the service with your community and gathering interest. So you might want to advertise it in-house and on social media that you're going to be offering this service. And that way you'll have people from the community reach out to you and say, hey, I didn't know that this was an option before, and they'll reach out and indicate that this is something that they're interested in. And then also reaching out to retirement homes to partner with them as well is a great way to start that with the in the group capacity. So the first I'll talk about is Homebound for individuals. So this service is for people who have health and mobility issues that prevent them from being able to visit the library on their own. Those who do not live in a group facility that are visited by library staff as well. So if you already have the program implemented in a facility where you do like a group visit, it's possible that your community may have multiple facilities or multiple retirement homes, and maybe you're not visiting one of them. So maybe there's one individual at that group home that you want to visit, but the rest aren't interested in having the service. So that's why it would just be one person at the facility. And so then for running the service for an individual, you want to indicate who will be doing the material selection and delivery for this person. So is it going to be the individual themselves? Will they be, going on track and placing the holds themselves, but they just need the delivery? Is there a family member who will do this for them, a support worker, a volunteer, or will this be yourself? In my case, I would do the selection for the individual homebound patrons. So I would have a list of their likes, and I would go to the shelves and I would select the books based on that. And then what I would do is check them out and have them ready for a volunteer to come and pick up those items and then deliver them to the homebound patron. And so which leads into my next point. You want to gather information about their favorite genres and authors, titles they've read, as well as material type preference. So the majority of the seniors that I was delivering materials to all preferred large print materials, just because their eyesight wasn't great as well. So you always want to make sure you're asking, what their preferences are. And then also, if your program goes on long enough, kind of checking up with them as well, because their preferences or abilities may change too while they're reading. And then communication is key. So make sure you're always kind of keeping in contact with the patron and with your volunteer as well, and making sure that everybody knows. So I know sometimes with seniors, because they can be a little bit forgetful, there would be times where we'd set up a date and the volunteer would go to visit and drop it off, and then the senior, wouldn't be there because they forgot that it was coming. And you have the conversation maybe an hour or the day before, and they just don't quite remember. So making sure that you're in constant communication and that they're writing down the dates and times that the visits are too. So, which leads to the last point, is to keep a regular schedule. So if you keep a regular schedule, it's a little bit easier kind of for everybody to coordinate when things are going to happen and mark it down in their calendars. All right, so moving on to Homebound for groups. So this service is for people who have health and mobility issues that prevent them from being able to visit the library on their own. And this is for people who live in a group facility. So the retirement homes, the long-term care, or the seniors apartment complexes. Those are all types of ones that I visited. And so this way you're kind of able to provide the service to more people at once. So when you're starting the service for a group, you want to be able to partner with a group home and somebody who works there who will be your contact. Having this contact is really important. That way, in case you need to call if you have to miss a visit, or they can call you if they have an issue. I know sometimes they have lockdowns for their facilities where they don't allow anybody in. So it's good that they can call you and let you know if this is something that happens. And it's good to have a good relationship because it's also nice if they're involved during the time of your visit. That way, if some of the seniors aren't bringing back some of their books, the contact can maybe go with them to their rooms and help them take a look for where these items might be, or that contact can also check. A lot of these facilities have like a little library where they put donated materials in, so they can go and check and see if maybe your materials got lost or put in there by accident. So it's great to have that kind of extra person to help uh, you know, assist the seniors when with their materials. And so then the next thing to make sure is to set up regular days to visit. So my visits would always be on the second and fourth Thursday of the month. And I would always make sure to let them know that this was the regular schedule, so they kind of knew what to expect. The next is to create a membership form and include a reading survey in that. So, they would go and mark down their favorite authors and genres and past books that they've read. And that way, when you're selecting materials to bring for them to choose from, then there's options there for them, and which leads to the book selection. So you can choose how you want to do your delivery. Maybe you want to personalize it and bring just individual books for the people and deliver those, but you can also provide it where you bring a selection of books and have them laid out in a space, and then allow your patrons there to go through and select books like they would at the library. So this is kind of a lot of fun for them because they don't often get the opportunity to browse the stacks. So this way you're giving them that chance to kind of have that experience again. All right, so what you'll need for your visits is reliable transportation and insurance. You'll want to make sure that you look into this first and see what your options are. The next is a reasonable sized bins or totes to be able to carry the books. If you get too large with your bins of books, it just gets way too heavy, and it's really tough to kind of navigate when you're visiting the homes with larger bins of books. So we had fairly good sized ones, and I could fit 3 of them on a cart that would fold up into my car. So a book cart or dolly is also really important. If you have a larger vehicle, you don't need to worry about your cart folding up, but I found a foldable book cart from Canadian Tire, so that worked really well for me. The next thing is electronics. So you'll want to make sure you have a laptop, a USB stick, and a scanner. And then the next is an accounts binder. You'll need a notebook, membership forms, pen, pencil, and then blank library cards. So these are just kind of the regular supplies that I made sure to have with me when I was doing my visits. All right, so the prep day for groups. So because I was visiting 4 different homes, it took me an afternoon to prepare. So I would collect the books and check them out to a homebound card. That way, the next morning, if I was going to deliver, or when I was going to deliver the books, none of these books would then come up on the holds list to be picked by staff. So then they would already be taken in consideration. The staff wouldn't have to worry about these books missing because I have them. Your next question will be, do you have access to Wi-Fi when you're at these homes? So because I did not, I prepared all of the accounts ahead of time and had to do things a little bit differently than if you do have Wi-Fi. So if you do have Wi-Fi, you'd be able to just kind of charge and update the laptop the day before, and your visit's pretty much ready to go. Because I didn't have Wi-Fi, I had to prepare the accounts by going through and renewing all of their items, and then printing off their accounts. That way I had a physical copy of what each person had. And then I would create and print off bookmarks with what the next 2 visit dates were. That way, when they came to check out their materials from me, then I could put that in and that would have the next visit date and be that reminder for them that I would be visiting kind of soon. So then I would have everything ready to go for the next day. So I had 2 homes in the morning and 2 homes in the afternoon that I visited. It's important to take your transportation time into consideration as well. So I spent an hour at each home, and it will change depending on, like I said, if you have Wi-Fi or not. So I will kind of go through and explain both. So as the best I can, because I didn't use the Wi-Fi, but I imagine that using Wi-Fi and Leap is very easy. So I would set up in the designated space and lay out all the books and set up the laptop that I was using. I would take everybody's returns, and during this time, I would cross off their materials. So I would find their name in the binder and their account and cross off each of their materials that they returned. And then this way I would also be able to see if they were missing something. So I'd be like, Margaret, you're missing this book. Do you want to take a look for it? Or they could tell me, oh, I'll renew it. And if they say that because I had renewed them the day before, then it would be good to go. And so then the next thing is to check out materials. So as you're kind of like taking the items from the patrons, they can look around at the tables and take a look at the materials you've laid out. Sometimes when you're new to the program, it's good to maybe set a limit of the books that they take out, just to kind of get an idea of whether the person is good at bringing their books back or not, because if they get into too many, sometimes that can be a little tough for them to get through. And each person is different. So I would say most of my patrons would always take out maybe 2 or 3 books, and that would be enough for them because I was visiting every 2 weeks. So that's a pretty quick turnaround time as well. But there was one lady who every single time I visited, she would take out 16 books and she would have them all done. So, you know, everybody's different. But yeah, I think it's unbelievable how she got through 16 books every 2 weeks and like never renewing any of them. So yeah, her receipt at the end of it was always just like, you saved like just an incredible amount of money. So that was always fun to see. So yeah, so once you as you check out the materials to your patrons, make sure you're sticking that bookmark in there. As I put the bookmark in there too, I always let them know the date. So saying it out loud to them is also a really great reminder. You know, as you know, and something that will hopefully prompt their memory when that date comes around that, oh, it's library day today. And then just chatting with the patrons during your visit and, you know, getting to know them. This is a great time to ask the patrons, you know, did you enjoy this book? You know, what would you recommend? It's a great time to kind of get to know what they're reading. And then you can compare to, like, some of your readers might read the same things, but maybe you don't read similarly to them. So it's a great way to kind of do reader's advisory. So, you know, you can ask Eleanor, you know, did you enjoy that murder mystery? And, you know, she loved it. So then when you go to the next home, if there's somebody who enjoys murder mysteries, you can say, hey, this was recommended and, you know, was really good. If, you know, maybe try this one sometime. So because the genres I read were a little bit different than the genres that they read. So then, oh, I don't know why that skipped ahead. Where are we? Okay, there. Sorry about that. So once you're done with the home, kind of at the end of the hour, you pack everything up, and then you know, you visit the rest of your home. So the nice thing is that when you visit, if you're visiting multiple homes, they'll bring back their items. So then you can lay those items out at the next homes and they'll get an opportunity to borrow those materials. And The materials you select for your visit will also vary on the home that you visit. So um, the 4 main homes that I visited were typically very good with their materials. But when I visited long-term care, I found like a lot more of the materials went missing. A lot more of the materials came back damaged. So what I ended up doing for those ones is creating a rule for myself to only pick materials that were like older than 2 or 3 years. That way, if the materials went missing or damaged, then they had already kind of had a life, circulating within our collection. And it wasn't that big of a deal if we just had to, delete them off their account sort of thing. And so then once you return back to the library, again, this is speaking like if you were doing on the through the offline cert form, you would check in all of the materials that are in your bins. And so, like I said, if you're using the offline form, you would print each of the forms and then check out all the materials to your patrons. So you'd want to make sure that you're checking in all the materials first and then printing the forms and checking the materials out. That way, you're not taking something off after it's been checked out to a person. And so then you want to check any notes that you took during your visits for people maybe requesting certain authors or certain books. Just double checking some of my notes here. Okay. All right, so finally, there's other opportunities that you can kind of coordinate and include in your homebound programming. So I developed a fundraiser to help support the program. We were finding, it was difficult to have conversations with the families afterwards if a patron had 4 or 5 books out and they had passed away. How do you get those books back? So you can always talk to the homes and see if they're able to get those books back. You can always contact the families, but that can be really, really difficult conversation to have. So what I ended up doing was creating a sponsor senior program where people could just donate to this anytime. And this fund would help cover the cost of books that we weren't going to be, getting back to the library, or help covering the costs if one of the seniors damaged a book or lost a book. So this would help cover that, all of those costs. Another opportunity is to donate your weeded materials to these retirement homes. So maybe let's say you can't do a full-blown homebound program, but you're weeding your collection. If you do have a retirement home or maybe seniors apartment complexes, typically they have a little bit of a library or an area where they have books, and they're typically always willing to take in donated materials, especially if you're getting rid of large print materials and Christian fiction materials. Partner with local transportation and the retirement home to see if you could maybe have the seniors visit the library. So in my community, when we did this, I would host a seniors tea at the library, but then I would make sure to have transportation go to the homes that I visit and be able to bring some of the seniors to the library so that they have the opportunity to come and visit and kind of get out of their homes for a little bit. Also make sure another one. So this is an idea that I had that I hadn't actually implemented myself, but you could always set aside visit or time during your visits to answer tech questions or assist with e-resources. Kind of as we go forward, we're, getting into an aging population where they might be tech savvy. So having time to show them some of your new e-resources or spending some time to connect them with ebooks might be beneficial. And then I open the floor for you guys to share your ideas about Homebound or about what you are implementing in your libraries. Feel free to put up your hand or put it in chat.
Christine, there is a comment in chat. It's not a question, but it's from Christy, who says Wi-Fi and Leap are very easy to use. And this is Jessica, by the way, Christine's colleague. And I did want to add that, yeah, Leap is pretty incredible as a outreach tool. And there is another question here for you, Christine. Did you ever use the outreach? I lost it. Now my mouse isn't working.
I see it here.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah. Did you ever use the outreach services in Polaris? So there was maybe one patron that I used that option for, but at the time, I don't think I used it correctly. And so I've had some conversations with Lena about that outreach service in Polaris, and she said it has some pretty great options. So from the sounds of it, it will actually generate and do a little bit of reader's advisory. So it would maintain the individual's kind of reading list. That way you're not bringing the materials that they had checked out previously, but it will also, I believe, select similar materials that the patron could check out. So again, I'm not sure, like I haven't had the experience with that, but I believe there is a library that is utilizing it. So if I can figure out which one that is, I can contact you and maybe you can reach out to them and see how they enjoy using it for years, but not to its full potential. Yeah, and that was, I think, the same as me, where I was using it to prevent checking out similar books to a person, but not in the way where it would recommend books for them. So and it looks like Stephanie has a question as well. So curious if you have any info on volunteer coordination. I don't think we have the staff time. Would you still order books from other libraries? So again, it kind of depended with like the ordering books from other libraries. It would depend on the patron. So typically I liked to make sure that I was using our own library's materials to check out to the homebound patrons, just because sometimes I didn't know how long they would be with an item. So I wouldn't want to borrow an item from another library and have it at the seniors home with them for, maybe a few months. If it was like older titles, sometimes I would call the library and let them know, hey, my patron wants this book, but they are homebound, so it might take a little bit longer for them to read this item. And then when it comes to volunteer coordination, so there was volunteers in the position prior to when I became the homebound coordinator, but I had kept a call out for volunteers, and there was a few people who came in and expressed interest. So then what I did for volunteers is they would just have to sign up, do a volunteer form and get a criminal record check done. And then I would coordinate with the volunteer, and the volunteer would just do the delivery. So for that, I would contact the patron, ask them questions about what books they liked. I would do the book selection, and then the volunteer would do just the delivery only. But if you, like you're saying, you don't really have the staff time, if you don't think that staff could do selection, you could always allow the volunteer to do the selection. If you provide maybe a survey to the patron where they write down genres and stuff, then you could always allow the volunteer to kind of have that survey, and that way when they're doing the selection, the items would be picked by them and then delivered by them. Another option could be that Polaris function where it's going through and selecting books for them. So then all you would have to do is then find them off the shelf, sort of thing. So hopefully that answers your question. And if anybody else has any more questions, feel free to ask now. Did they need any special insurance or typical regular vehicle insurance works? So I don't know all of the insurance like rules, and you'd probably want to double check. But for me, when we did it, I went to my insurance and told them that I would be doing like book deliveries, and they adjusted my insurance, and then my library paid the difference. So what I was being paid, or what I was paying for insurance prior to the increase, and then they were paying that difference. So yeah, so it's better to, talk to the insurance company and kind of get that information. I also know Wendy here too would maybe be somebody great to reach out to get more information on insurance, because she's the one who deals with that here for us. So could just sign a waiver. When our volunteers could just sign a waiver. I'm gonna have Jessica pop in here. She's just trying to unmute. It can kind of hide sometimes.
Hey, Stephanie. Yes, that's an option. That would be something. So talking to Christine mentioned talking to, the insurance company for the personal vehicle, but it would be worthwhile chatting with your insurance company about signing a waiver, because I do think that would be an option. Having them sign a waiver to use their personal vehicle, etc. But your insurance company would be able to help you sort of navigate what that waiver might need to look like.
Yeah, thank you for popping in there.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, and if anybody else has any other questions, feel free, or if you have any ideas or things that you're doing in regards to homebound delivery, feel free to share. I know the webinar was a little bit quicker than it originally planned today, but are you going to do a more in-depth Polaris training? In regard to the homebound or the outreach option? It's definitely something I can look into. I could have a chat with Lena and Andrew and see if that's something we can maybe take a look at. And like I said, I can try and figure out which library is using it right now, because I think it's been quite successful for them. So yeah, I'll take a look at that. Oh, I just remembered one more thing. I put the template. I'm just gonna end the PowerPoint. I have created a template and uploaded it onto our program repository on the internet. So everybody can see the internet page right now. Okay, so if you hover over programming, there's just a spot called programming repository. And in here, there's a seniors section. So when you click on there, that'll bring you in, and I've uploaded the Homebound Services application form. So this is just kind of a template that you could use if you don't have one that I created. So I'll just open that up. And just kind of show you what that looks like. All right, so this is the kind of the exact one that I used, just without the branding. And so I would have them fill out the main contact information, fill in like the reason why delivery was necessary, the duration of it. And then this section was one that I added when I took over the program, was the alternate contact information. So sometimes if books were damaged and we did charge the patron for replacement, sometimes it was difficult to have that conversation with them, or maybe they weren't the person who actually was in charge of their accounts. So having an alternate contact, whether it's a family member or somebody who is looking after their accounts, putting that person in here is kind of a good option. Like I said, though, this is a template, so if you don't want this section in here, you can always take that out. And then just this part here saying that they agree to the different that they understand the homebound service that you're providing. And then this was just for the library use. So this would be the form that we'd have them fill in when they did their membership. And then I would also include a survey. So I will also try to track down the survey I used, and I can pop that form into the repository. But if there's different homebound service things that you use or plans, feel free to pop them into this repository. This is a place that all of our libraries can share their ideas and their templates and stuff for other libraries to be able to utilize. But yeah, when I find that survey that I used, I can pop that in here too for everybody to be able to access. And then I'll just go to let's stop. All right. But yeah, so are there any further questions from anybody? Oh, I've never heard. Oh yeah, I see that Stephanie said I've never heard of the outreach option, so I'd love to hear about it. So yeah, I only played around with it a little bit, and like I said, I'll chat with Lena and we'll see if we can maybe have more information or a session on that specific feature. I think could be really cool. All right. If there's no other questions from anybody, then I think we'll wrap up here. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you everybody for joining me today for my webinar. I hope you have a lovely Thursday.